The sky has always belonged to Zeus, the mighty ruler of Olympus. From the highest peaks, he watched over gods and mortals, carrying thunder in his hand and judgment in his heart. For countless ages, his voice shook the heavens, a sound both feared and trusted by the world below. Yet even the strongest of gods cannot silence the whispers of time. They drift through the stars, carried by ancient winds, telling of a final trial waiting for Zeus. This trial is not of swords or blood, but of choices, destiny, and the weight of truth. The last war of Zeus is no battle of destruction, no storm of thunderbolts unleashed upon his foes. It is a war within, where silence holds greater power than noise, and doubt becomes the sharpest weapon. In this story, we walk beside the King of Gods, not as warriors, but as witnesses to his final test. A test that asks if power is enough to rule forever, or if wisdom must stand beside strength to guide the cosmos. And so, we begin the journey into the fading echoes of Olympus, where the last war of Zeus quietly awaits. The sky above Olympus grew restless, as clouds twisted into strange shapes, carrying secrets too heavy to remain hidden. Winds swept across the mountain with sharp cries, shaking leaves and breaking the stillness of the sacred halls. To mortals, such signs might seem like weather, but to the gods, nothing in the sky was ever ordinary. Every shift above was a message, and Zeus, the master of the sky, knew this was not a storm. He stood on the great balcony of Olympus, staring at the horizon, his face lit by the dim, trembling light. The air felt heavy, filled with whispers, as if the stars themselves spoke in languages lost to time. He knew storms better than anyone. But this was no storm, it was an omen of something greater. For centuries, his throne had stood unshaken, carved in eternal stone, guarded by thunder and fear. He had cast down titans, chained the giants, and silenced rebellion. But now, uncertainty touched him again. Behind him, the gods felt it too, their voices low, carrying the same unease that stirred in the skies. Hera spoke first of her doves, Apollo broke songs mid-verse, and Hermes whispered of darkening dreams. Signs gathered across earth and heaven, and all eyes turned toward Zeus, for the sky's unrest was his domain. But he kept silent, holding the weight of heaven within, though memories of the Titanomachy returned. He had sworn never again to let creation fall into ruin. But destiny seemed to rise once more. The sky, his own realm, resisted him now, reminding even kings that no reign lasts forever. The whispers in the clouds grew louder, speaking of a war unlike any before the last war. This war would not be fought with blades or lightning, but with choices, truth, and the courage to face himself. Below, mortals lit fires, prayed in temples, and gazed at strange heavens, sensing unease in the very air. Children clung to their mothers, farmers paused their plows, and priests begged Zeus for signs of hope. Night fell, and stars flickered as though they sent distant signals, shifting into riddles for Zeus alone. He looked upward, knowing the universe repeated itself only with purpose, and purpose had come again. Turning from the balcony, he walked into the great hall, where the council of gods awaited his word. Each step echoed like thunder, heavy with the knowledge that his final test had already begun. The restless sky had spoken, and the last war of Zeus was awakening. In the deep silence of night, the oracle of Delphi stirred from her trance, breath trembling as visions clouded her eyes. Her voice rose, trembling yet clear, as the earth beneath her shook, and she spoke with the voice of the unseen. Asterisk. The throne of the sky will tremble. The king who holds the storm must face the war within. Not by sword, not by flame, but by the weight of truth shall Olympus be tested. If wisdom fails, the heavens fall. If pride remains, the king is undone. Asterisk. Priests stood frozen, torches flickering, as her words echoed through the temple, heavy with meaning. Though they had heard countless prophecies, none had spoken so directly of Zeus. Whispers spread quickly across the lands. Travelers repeated the prophecy in marketplaces. Sailors spoke of it on distant seas, and shepherds sang of it on hills. Even mortals, untouched by the gods, felt the stirring in the air. Soon, word reached Olympus. Zeus received the prophecy in silence. his face unreadable. He had heard prophecies before, but this one spoke directly to him. No enemy, no monster to strike down. This prophecy spoke of a different challenge, one that would test him not with thunder, but with truth, a war within himself. He turned the prophecy over in his mind. Asterisk. A war within times. It was not a simple test. It was a question of wisdom, of judgment, of the very essence of his reign. Hera entered the chamber, her presence as steady as the earth itself. She had heard the prophecy too, and knew it would weigh heavily on her husband. "You cannot ignore this," she said softly. "Prophecies are not storms you wait out. They are roads you must walk." Zeus said nothing, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon where lightning danced in silence. Hera stepped closer. "You have faced armies, but this is not an army. This is a test of your heart. Are you prepared for that?" Zeus remained still, but her words dug deep. He was the king, the god who commanded the storm. But Hera often saw the truths he wished to avoid. Meanwhile, the oracle's prophecy spread far and wide. Mortals debated its meaning. Some feared it heralded the god's downfall. Others thought it foretold a new age. Philosophers, kings, and poets all spoke of it. Even those who did not believe in prophecy glanced nervously at the sky. They sensed something shifting, something vast, as though the very air held its breath. In Olympus, the council of gods gathered. Apollo spoke first, his face troubled by the visions that still haunted him. "I saw light entwined with shadow," he said. "One does not destroy the other. They move together, as if the sun itself must bow to the night." Poseidon's voice rumbled like the sea. "If Olympus trembles, it is not because of mortals. It is because we have grown divided. Zeus, brother, perhaps the storm is not outside you, but within." Athena stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "The prophecy speaks of wisdom, not power. If you would endure, father, you must listen not only to us, but to the truth you hide from yourself." Zeus felt the weight of his children's words. They spoke not only of the world, but of him. He had always been the unshaken one, the ruler who decided without question. Now, the voices around him grew louder, and the silence within him seemed heavier. His reign, once unshaken, now seemed uncertain. That night, as the council ended, Zeus returned to the balcony. The stars above seemed to lean closer, watching him. The prophecy echoed in his mind, its meaning still elusive but undeniable. The throne of the sky had never trembled before, and yet, beneath him, Zeus felt it, the first faint shake of destiny, the beginning of a new trial. The last war of Zeus had come. The prophecy still echoed in Olympus, but its weight spilled into the world of mortals. In Athens, philosophers debated beneath olive trees, their voices carrying questions about gods and fate. Some believed the prophecy meant Zeus's rule was fading into twilight. Others claimed it was a lesson that even gods must learn humility when the skies speak. But none could deny the heavens had grown strange and uneasy. The moon lingered in the night, reluctant to give her throne to the rising Sunday. The tides rose higher than expected, as if the sea itself resisted unseen chains. Farmers saw crops bowing toward the ground, as though nature bent under hidden weight. Mortals whispered if Zeus faltered, what would become of the world itself? For as long as memory stretched, he had been the pillar holding the heavens firm. Without him, would the very balance collapse into ruin? On Olympus, unease grew among the gods like a quiet storm. They turned their eyes to Zeus, waiting for him to speak, but silence lingered. Hermes returned from the mortal lands, urgency in his words. "Even villagers speak of the prophecy," he warned. "They feel a shadow in the sky, though they cannot see it. Their faith trembles." The gods knew faith was fragile, yet vital. Mortal belief kept Olympus strong, and without it, even gods could weaken. Apollo, still troubled by visions, tried to reassure his father. "I saw light dimmed, but not gone. The sun waits through night, then rises again." Yet Zeus found no comfort in his son's words. For the first time, he wondered if pride itself was the storm. Hera sought quiet counsel with Hestia, the steady flame of the hearth. "What do you see in this prophecy?" she asked. Hestia's calm eyes reflected timeless truth. The war is within him. If Zeus cannot face himself, Olympus cannot protect him. Hera left in silence, torn by love and fear. She had never seen her husband doubt himself, and doubt was a dangerous wound. Among mortals, more signs unfolded like riddles. Birds circled in strange patterns, as if searching for unseen paths. Sacred fires burned without heat, and waters showed stars in daylight, not signs of destruction, but of change pressing against the world. Poets sang in markets of gods, at crossroads, their verses haunting. Mortals began asking dangerous questions. What if even Zeus could fall? Poseidon grew restless, his patience thin as tides. He confronted Zeus, his voice roaring like waves. "Brother, you cannot remain still while the world trembles. Act, or the tide will rise." Zeus listened but stayed silent, the storm building inside him. It was not thunder or lightning, it was truth, fear, and unanswered questions. That night, he stood upon Olympus, the stars cold and watching. The moon hung heavy, and from the earth he heard mortal voices rise. Closing his eyes, Zeus felt for the first time the weight of humanity. Not weakness, but the truth that even gods must face doubt. The last war of Zeus had not begun in battlefields. It had begun here in the chambers of his heart. Olympus grew restless, the prophecy heavy as a cloak over its shining halls. At last, Zeus called for a council, summoning gods to the golden chamber of thrones. The air buzzed with unease, not rebellion, but quiet uncertainty spreading like mist. Zeus sat upon his throne, not to command, but to listen, a rare choice for him. Hera was first to speak, her tone steady. "The prophecy cannot be dismissed. Silence will not protect us. A storm ignored only grows stronger," she declared firmly. Poseidon leaned forward, voice like waves. "Cracks run through Olympus itself, brother. We must not stand divided. The world feels our weakness as surely as the sea." Athena's eyes shone sharp. "It speaks of truth, not armies. The test lies within." Apollo added softly. "Light and shadow move together. If resisted, balance will break." The council stirred with murmurs. Each word carried weight heavier than iron chains. Ares rose, restless. What war was ever won with words? Strength will decide this. Athena countered swiftly. "Wisdom is the greater armor. Spears cannot cut through truth." Their voices clashed like steel, yet Zeus remained silent, letting their truths surface. Hermes shifted uneasily. Mortals fear not only prophecy, but our silence. Faith trembles. The gods stiffened. They knew mortal belief was fragile, yet the lifeblood of Olympus. Apollo leaned forward again. "Father, the sun waits in night, but it always rises." Yet Zeus felt no comfort. Pride itself, he feared, was the storm unspoken. Hera turned in secret to Hestia, flame steady. "What do you see?" she asked. Hestia answered calmly. "The war is within him. If he falls, Olympus cannot guard him." Hera left in silence, torn by fear for her husband's doubt, more deadly than war. Among mortals, omens grew stranger. Birds circled, flames burned cold, rivers reflected stars. These were not signs of ruin, but change pressing at the edges of the world. Poets sang of gods, at crossroads, verses haunting the markets and halls of men. Mortals began whispering, if even Zeus could fall, what fate awaited heaven and earth? Poseidon's patience broke. "Brother," he thundered, "act before the tide swallows you whole." Zeus listened but answered not, the storm within louder than thunder outside. Then, a shadowed voice cut through the uninvited Hades had spoken. Prophecies do not care for harmony. They unfold whether you bend or resist. The throne trembles because you tremble, brother. That is the truth unspoken. Silence fell, darker than night. Even gods shifted uneasily at his words. Zeus clenched the throne's arm, lightning in his gaze. But thunder did not follow, for deep within, he knew Hades had struck close to the hidden truth. The council ended unresolved, leaving whispers of doubt lingering in Olympus's golden hall. Zeus sat long after all had gone, mind roaring louder than any storm. He had always been the unshaken king, But this war was unlike all others. Not titans, not monsters, the shadows of his own heart awaited him. And as stars looked on, Zeus knew the last war would be fought within. The prophecy shook Olympus, but it shook the mortal world even more. For gods, the words were heavy. For mortals, they were terrifying. For ages, Zeus ruled the skies. His thunder meant order. His lightning meant law. Now, whispers of his throne trembling reached villages, cities, and kingdoms. In Athens, philosophers gathered in the agora. Some said the gods were fragile. Others feared chaos would devour the earth if Zeus faltered. A young poet sang, asterisk, "If the heavens shake, the earth will quake. If the king must bend, who will guard us when pillars break?" Asterisk. The song spread fast, carried by sailors, merchants, and shepherds. Unease sharpened, like a blade drawn against the skin of the world. In Sparta, warriors spoke under firelight. They dreamed of mortals shaping destiny. For the first time, men asked, "Are the gods unshakable, or can they fall?" In Delphi, pilgrims still came, offering prayers with trembling steps. Priests repeated the prophecy, unsure if it promised renewal or ruin. The earth itself seemed restless. Storms raged. Winds whispered. Stars leaned closer. From distant lands came more signs. Seas calmed, deserts bloomed, mountains groaned. The world felt alive, aware, and watching. On Olympus, Zeus gazed down, watching mortals with storm-filled eyes. He heard their prayers, their fear, their doubt, and it weighed on him. For gods drew strength from mortal faith. If that bond broke, Olympus shook. Hera stood beside him. "You fear their voices," she whispered. "Not because they doubt you, but because they mirror your own doubt." Zeus stayed silent, but he knew her words were true. The prophecy was no longer spoken in Delphi alone. It lived in the hearts of mortals. It breathed in their questions. Athena walked among them, disguised, listening to their voices. She returned to Olympus. "They no longer ask if it is true," she said. "They ask if you are strong enough to face it. And if you are not, Father, what becomes of us all?" The words struck deep, heavier than thunder. Zeus felt countless eyes upon him, mortal and divine alike. The last war of Zeus was not distant. It had already begun. That night, lightning split the sky, but no thunder followed. The heavens seemed to hold their breath. Mortals looked up, uneasy, as silence grew heavier than storm. The prophecy was alive, no longer a whisper. It was 1,000 voices, rising from earth to sky. The world had changed forever, and there was no turning back. The whispers of mortals grew louder, and Olympus could no longer stay silent. Zeus called for a great council, the grandest since the dawn of the gods. The golden hall filled with immortals, each carrying fear, ambition, and doubt. Apollo arrived first, radiant yet restless, carrying the weight of prophecy. Athena followed, sharp and calm, knowing destiny was shaped by choices. Hera entered, her gaze loyal yet challenging, fixed upon her husband. Poseidon came with a crash of waves, pride shining like the sea. Demeter brought the scent of earth, her thoughts resting on mortal's fate. Artemis slipped in silent, silver gaze, steady as a drawn bow. Ares stormed through, eager, as if the word war had woken him. Hephaestus followed, burdened by the thought of forges burning endlessly. Hermes, Hestia, Dionysus all arrived, their presence weaving tension thicker. Even Hades came, silent, his dark aura chilling the golden chamber. When all had gathered, Zeus rose, his storm-filled eyes commanding silence. "You know why you are here," he thundered. "The prophecy cannot be ignored." A murmur rippled, restless as waves against the shore. Apollo spoke, voice steady yet sorrowful. "The last war awaits us all." Athena's words cut sharp. "We must face it, not deny it." Poseidon leaned forward, trident gleaming. "And if you fall, brother, then who rules?" Old rivalries stirred, ambition glimmering in his sea-blue eyes. Hera's voice rang like steel. "Careful, Poseidon. This is no time for hunger." But the thought lingered. If Zeus fell, who would rise? Ares broke the silence. Let war come. Let strength decide the end. Demeter's voice, gentle yet firm, cut through. And what of mortals, Ares? The gods wavered between reason and fire, between fear and desire. Zeus raised his hand, lightning dancing between his fingers. This is not a war of choice, he declared. It is fate. Olympus will not crumble in silence. We will face it together. Yet doubt lingered in every heart. Ambition restless, unity fragile. The council ended, but the air stayed heavy with division. Thunder rolled outside, yet no rain fell upon the earth. The heavens seemed uncertain, caught between light and shadow. One by one, the gods departed, each holding secrets untold. The gathering was over, but the storm had only begun. The great council ended, but its echoes lingered like thunder fading. Each god returned to their realm with more doubts than answers. Zeus spoke of unity, yet unity was fragile, thin as glass. On Olympus, silence stretched like a thread pulled too tight. The gods walked heavy-footed, their thoughts on futures unspoken. Poseidon lingered, trident gleaming, his mind on old rivalries. He remembered yielding once, but now wondered if fate turned again. Hera stood before her mirror, queen and wife in reflection. She loved Zeus, yet feared his pride would doom them all. Athena paced the gardens, her mind sharper than any blade. She saw cracks from the council, ready to split into chasms. Apollo returned to Delphi, mortals crowding with desperate prayers. Even the god of truth felt destiny's veil cloud his sight. He spoke in riddles, though his heart longed for clarity. Ares left Olympus with fire burning in his veins. He stirred men's dreams of conquest, glory instead of doom. Artemis retreated to forests, but even nature felt tense. Moonlight fell sharper, and animals moved with unease. Hermes flew between worlds, weaving secrets in silence. Knowledge was his weapon, sharper than any divine steel. Hades descended, but even the underworld seemed restless. The shades whispered, awaiting storms beyond death's domain. The seeds of division had been planted among gods. Some longed for Zeus to stand, others for him to fall. Among mortals, unease deepened with every rumor carried. Some prayed harder, clinging to Olympus for shelter. Others whispered freedom, daring to dream of God's fall. In Athens, philosophers debated by flickering torchlight. Was destiny fixed, or could choice break its chain? In Sparta, warriors sharpened blades beneath the moon. They saw not fear, but opportunity in Olympus trembling. The war was no longer just in heaven above. It was written in mortal hearts, fierce and uncertain. Zeus sat heavy on his throne, carrying two worlds. He gazed at thunderclouds gathering slow, unrelenting on the horizon. He had been storms incarnate, master of thunder. But this storm was different, born of doubt and fear. It grew silently, beyond lightning, beyond command. The seeds had been sown, and destiny waited to bloom. Whether in ruin or renewal, none could yet tell. Far beyond Olympus, the fates sat at their eternal loom. Clotho spun, Lachesis measured, and Atropos watched with her shears. The loom's song wavered, threads slipping from their destined place. Clotho whispered, Zeus's thread grows taut, pulled in two directions. Lachesis replied, his path bends and splits, yet I cannot see its end. Atropos frowned, lifting her shears, but even she hesitated to cut. The loom trembled, as though resisting its own design. On earth, farmers sowed seeds, unsure if storms would bless or destroy. Sailors studied horizons, restless under Poseidon's shifting moods. Mothers prayed to Hera for safety. Warriors whispered Ares' name in dreams. Everywhere, whispers spread, was fate fixed, or could choice alter it? Zeus gazed skyward, sensing the loom though he could not see it. He had thunder, but destiny was never fully his to command. Athena came quietly, her voice steady with resolve. Father, the threads unravel. Do we follow fate or shape it? Zeus paused, searching the stars, then spoke slowly. The fates weave, yet choice lives within us. Even gods must decide their path. Athena bowed, though her gaze stayed sharp. Then the choice must be made soon before the tapestry tears. In Delphi, Apollo's priestess shook with visions by the fire. She saw threads unraveling, golden strands falling into darkness. Her voice cried out, "When gods hesitate, mortals rise. When fate falters, choice ignites." The word spread like fire across Greece. Some believed mortals would soon be free of the gods. Others feared chaos without Olympus guiding the world. Still others dreamed of a future shared by gods and men. In the underworld, Hades sat upon his shadowed throne. The living dream of freedom, he mused. But freedom itself is a chain. Souls stirred, restless, as if awaiting some unseen storm. Hermes carried whispers from temple to battlefield. Silent, but watchful, he knew each word and rumor was a thread in the great design. Still, the fates worked, relentless in their rhythm. Clotho spun, Lachesis measured, Atropos held her shears. But even in their eternal duty, a silence lingered. In that silence, choice could slip in, altering the weave. The last war of Zeus was no longer about strength. It had become fate against freedom, and all were part of it. The wind carried voices through the valleys of Greece, from Athens to Sparta. Mortals spoke of change and questioned the gods. In Athens, the philosopher Damon taught his students with quiet fire. "If Zeus hesitates, then perhaps their rule is not eternal," he said. His words spread in taverns and were written in secret scrolls. In Sparta, whispers became calls for power, not freedom. "If gods falter, Sparta shall rise by its own strength," declared their captain. Farmers and shepherds gazed at the stars, wondering about destiny. Some clung to faith, others dared to dream of freedom, but all felt the tremor of change beneath their daily lives. Hera heard the murmurs of doubt and turned to Zeus. "The mortals turn from us," she said, her voice heavy. Zeus replied, thunder low in his chest, "It is the cost of hesitation. Even thunder cannot silence rebellion." Ares rejoiced, his eyes burning with restless delight. "Let them rise. Rebellion ends in war, and war is mine." Athena answered calmly, her wisdom firm, "This is not war of swords, but of voices and ideas. Mortals seek a place beside us, not beneath us. If we ignore them, we will lose not just prayers, but trust." Hermes carried whispers between earth and sky. "They dream of gods as guides, not rulers," he told Olympus. "Some dream of a world without gods at all." The words shook the halls of the immortals, for gods thrived on faith, and without it, they weakened. Zeus rose upon his throne, thunder echoing in the clouds. "If they reject us, the order of the world is at stake." Yet Athena's truth pressed heavy in his heart. Order could not be built on fear alone. At Delphi, Apollo heard desperate prayers in his temple. He strummed his lyre, notes of sorrow and hope filling the night. He saw what others missed. The whispers were not just rebellion. They were a plea for the gods to listen again. In the underworld, Hades spoke among restless shadows. "Mortals rise because they fear being forgotten," he mused. "Perhaps it is we who forgot them first." The whispers grew louder, like waves before a storm. No spear had been cast, no sword raised. Yet the world stood at the edge of a new war, not of flesh and blood, but of hearts and minds. The last war of Zeus now lived in mortal voices. It was rising, daring, and it could not be stopped. The storm faded, its thunder rolling away like a memory. Zeus sat on his throne, his lightning dimmed, his eyes heavy with centuries of burden. For the first time, he looked less like a god of storms, and more like a ruler caught in silence. The hall of Olympus grew still, the gods uneasy, whispers fading into awe. They had seen not only his fury, but his fragility. Athena stepped forward, calm and steady, her voice carrying wisdom. "Father," she said, "the last war was not only against foes, but against shadows within." Zeus met her gaze, pride softening at her words, his voice low. "I fought not only to guard Olympus, but to silence the fear of losing it." Apollo rose, his voice bright. "As the Sunday, Olympus shines not through one alone, but when all of us bear the light together." The truth of his words echoed through the hall, reaching each god. Hera, long stern, now spoke with a rare softness. Your strength is unmatched, Zeus, but even strength must rest. Let us stand with you, not beneath you. A deep silence followed, timeless and heavy. Zeus closed his eyes, hearing echoes of every battle and triumph. The Titans, the giants, every foe, none weighed as heavily as his own heart. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than thunder, steady as a river. Perhaps the age of one king is ending. Perhaps Olympus must rule through unity. If this is the last war, let it be remembered not for fire, but for peace. The gods exchanged glances, sensing the dawn of something new. Hermes smiled, light and swift, breaking the weight with hope. Then let the message be carried across realms. Olympus stands together. Zeus allowed himself a weary smile, the storm at last behind him. The sky beyond Olympus cleared, golden light spilling over the world. Mortals looked upward, unaware of the struggle, yet filled with hope. The gods had remembered peace, and that was the true victory. The last war of Zeus was not about power, but the rebirth of unity. The skies above Olympus cleared, but within the halls, a quieter storm remained. Zeus had spoken of unity, yet the path forward was uncertain and fragile. The gods gathered, not as subjects, but as equals in council. The marble hall, once ruled by decrees, now echoed with many voices. Athena spoke first, her voice steady and wise. Unity cannot be declared. It must be lived every day, in every choice. Her words carried weight, but also a challenge to all present. Poseidon leaned forward, his trident gleaming like the sea's edge. Unity sounds noble, but will each of us yield when storms within us rise? Apollo answered calmly, light in his voice. The sea's tides do not yield, brother. They are rhythm. Olympus too must learn rhythm. Hera's sharp gaze softened as she spoke. We must guard not only our own realms, but the bond between us. Zeus remained silent, listening with uncharacteristic patience. It seemed as though he had passed the torch to them. Hermes broke the stillness, quick and restless in tone. Mortals watch us. If we stumble, they will stumble. If we rise, they too will rise. The reminder pulled the gods back to a forgotten truth. Olympus was not separate from the world, it pulsed with it. Demeter spoke, her voice gentle but resolute. Let us begin not with decrees, but with acts of nurture. Let earth, seas, skies, and fires be tended in harmony. Ares leaned on his spear, eyes glinting with defiance. Conflict is not banished by words. It waits, it tests, it shapes us. Athena met his gaze without fear. Conflict may test us, but unity will define us. You are strongest when you stand not alone, but with allies. Ares lowered his eyes, unwilling to admit her truth aloud. The council pressed on, fragile threads of understanding forming, not perfect harmony, but a careful weaving of voices. At last, Zeus rose, tall and calm. Perhaps the last war was never about rule but endurance. Today I see endurance not in my lightning, but in your voices joined. Silence fell, no longer heavy with fear, but with promise. Seeds had been planted for a future yet unwritten. Below, mortals lived on, unaware of the gods' quiet shift. Yet perhaps they would feel it, like a song carried in the wind. Olympus now faced its greatest challenge, the challenge of peace. Uncertain, fragile, yet worth facing with courage. The last war of Zeus was never about endings. It was always about beginnings. The golden dawn spread across Olympus, yet questions lingered in the hearts of the gods. Unity had been spoken, but unity still had to be proven in action. The great hall no longer trembled with thunder, but with the quiet hum of change. For centuries, Olympus had known hierarchy, with Zeus at the peak and others beneath. His lightning ruled not just the skies, but the order of their immortal world. Now that order trembled, not from rebellion, but from the chance of something new. The council gathered again, not with thunder, but with steady, measured voices. Zeus no longer sat above them, but among them an equal among equals. This simple act carried the weight of mountains and shifted the air of Olympus. It was no longer his throne that defined him, but his willingness to listen. Athena rose, her voice calm and firm, steady as wisdom itself. If Olympus is to endure, we must build not only for us, but for mortals. Mortals live by our stories. Let those stories be of balance, not rivalry. Her words cut deep, for all knew the truth she carried in them. Mortals prayed and feared, shaping their lives under the shadow of the gods. Their harvests, storms, and peace were reflections of Olympus itself. Poseidon's voice rumbled like waves against cliffs, fierce yet uncertain. Balance is noble, yet the sea is never still. Chaos always returns. Hestia spoke softly, her words warm as a steady hearth flame. Balance is not stillness. It is the fire that shifts, but always endures. Mortals gather around the hearth, not for perfection, but for its light. Even Poseidon, wild as the ocean, bowed his head at her truth. Zeus listened, the weight of ages pressing against his shoulders. For so long he carried Olympus by thunder, by strength alone. Yet in their voices he felt a truth more lasting than storms. Olympus was not his to hold, it was theirs to share. Hermes rose, restless, with mischief and fire in his eyes. Mortals won't see our counsel. They'll see signs, the skies, the seas. If we are united, let those signs speak harmony, not discord. Demeter's smile was faint, but filled with calm resolve. Let the fields be our proof. Let grain rise in plenty, not famine. Let the land itself declare that Olympus is whole again. Apollo's voice was bright, carrying both light and prophecy. Let the sun rise not in pride, but in healing and song, music, prophecy, and light. These two can be gifts of unity. The gods began to see the shape of a new Olympus, not the tyranny of one, nor the rivalry of many, but harmony. Zeus rose, no longer as a ruler, but as a companion. For too long, I thought Olympus stood on my storm alone. Now I see it stands because of us all, united in purpose. If this new age begins, let it start not in war, but peace. Silence filled the hall, but it was heavy with possibility. The gods looked around and saw not rivals, but partners at last. Far below, mortals stirred as the world quietly shifted. Farmers felt fertile soil return to their fields. Sailors met calmer seas and winds that carried them home. Families gathered by hearth fires that burned steady through the night. They did not hear the counsel, but they felt its breath, as if heaven itself had chosen to breathe easier at last. The last war of Zeus had ended, not in storm, but in harmony. And in that harmony, the gods found peace and a beginning eternal. The war on Olympus had ended, yet the mortal world below was only beginning to awaken to the shift in the heavens. For centuries, mortals had lived under the shadow of divine rivalries that shaped storms, earthquakes, and their daily fate. They prayed, sacrificed, and endured, never knowing which quarrel above might decide their future harvest or their survival. But then something subtle and powerful shifted, like the first calm breeze after a long and endless storm. A farmer woke to find his fields blooming with grain after years of barren soil that once yielded only despair. A sailor returned from the sea, amazed that the waves carried him home without storms blocking his path. Children played under skies glowing with golden light, no longer trembling at the sound of thunder. Mortals could not see the divine council or hear Zeus and Athena speak, but they felt the change ripple. It was as if the heavens had breathed out, lifting an invisible burden from their weary shoulders. In villages and cities, whispers spread like fire. Have the gods made peace? Is this a new age? Priests lit incense, not in fear, but in gratitude. Their hymns filled with thanksgiving instead of desperation. Zeus watched from the clouds and saw mortals laugh beneath his sky, free of dread for the first time. His storms rested, replaced by calm. This quiet was not weakness, but strength of another kind. Athena, wise and thoughtful, spoke to him. Mortals reflect us. If we quarrel, their lives unravel. Her words pierced like truth, long hidden, reminding Zeus of the bond between gods and mortals. Poseidon too gazed upon his seas, no longer conquering ships, but guiding them safely home. Even chaos, he mused, finds rhythm when shared with purpose and tempered by unity. In mortal homes, Families gathered around hearth fires, sharing bread and stories of divine reconciliation. Children grew not with fear of wrath, but with hope in guidance. And that hope spread like flame. Hera watched these mortal families and felt her stern pride soften into respect for their endurance. Their faith was never just fear, she admitted quietly. It was survival turned into trust. Hermes, playful and curious, danced unseen among villages, delighting in festivals and joyful voices. Mortals celebrate even the smallest gifts, he laughed. Perhaps we gods should learn from them. Zeus pondered in silence, thinking of storms, thunder, and centuries of ruling through dominance. Had power been worth the fear it caused? Or was true strength found in stewardship and trust? He saw himself not as a tyrant now, but as a guardian who chose restraint over fury. The thunder remained his, yet he no longer needed to wield it to prove his place. Mortals also transformed, praying not only for safety, but in gratitude, joy, and hope renewed. The bond between heaven and earth shifted from fear to trust, from trembling to harmony. This bond itself was the true victory of the last war. Deeper than any clash of power, the gods had found unity, but mortals had found peace, and that peace became Olympus's crown. Their laughter, their harvests, and their songs rose like the greatest hymn Olympus had ever heard. Not a hymn of thunder, not a hymn of storms, but a hymn of harmony between heaven and earth eternal. The heavens had quieted, but the story was not yet over. Peace among the gods was fragile, and mortals looked upward with awe and uncertainty. Would harmony endure? Or would Olympus fall back into storms? Zeus sat upon a stone, not a throne. The golden seat of supremacy remained untouched in the great hall. No god claimed it, and none wished to, for it was a relic of an old age. An age shaped by rivalry, fear, and the heavy weight of power. Now the gods met not above, but around, in circles of shared voices. Their councils began not with thunder, but with silence. A silence to remember the cost of the last war and the lessons it left behind. Zeus spoke softly, his words no longer commands but humble offerings. I once thought Olympus stood because of me alone, but now I see it stands because of us all, together. Athena's wisdom sharpened into guidance, not judgment. The mortals will tell our legacy. Let it be one of balance, not fear. Apollo's voice glowed like sunlight as he added his truth. Let our stories heal, let them inspire, not divide. For the first time, the gods spoke not of dominance, but of legacy. Far below, mortals too began to awaken to the change. Artists painted skies filled with golden rays, no longer torn by lightning. Poets wrote verses of gods who had chosen unity over fury. Children learned myths not of endless wars, but of renewal and peace. Hermes watched with delight, unseen among mortals. Words, he mused, are faster than wings. They will carry this Olympus farther than thunder. Yet not all gods embraced the stillness. Ares clenched his fists, restless in the silence of Olympus. What am I without conflict? He muttered into the air. Hestia answered gently, her voice warm as the hearth. You are not diminished, Ares. Courage lives even in peace. Her truth softened him, for bravery was still needed to guard harmony. Zeus realized then that legacy was not thunder carved into stone. It was fire, water, wisdom, song, the spirit of Olympus shared by all. His last war had not destroyed Olympus, it had transformed it. Mortals felt this change as well, weaving it into their lives. They told stories not just of Zeus, but of the gods together. Farmers honored Demeter with festivals of fertile harvest. Sailors sang hymns to Poseidon for calm seas that guided them home. Families prayed to Hestia, grateful for the warmth of their hearths. Children danced under Apollo's light, singing of hope reborn each dawn. Olympus was no longer a mountain of thunder. It had become a mountain of voices, each carrying harmony. Zeus smiled at last, without sorrow. His lightning rested now, no longer a weapon, but a symbol of unity. The greatest legacy, he whispered, is not power, but peace. The gods fell silent, not in doubt, but in agreement. They knew the age of storms had ended, and as mortals looked to the skies, they no longer trembled. They lifted their eyes with hope, knowing Olympus had chosen harmony at last. The clouds above Olympus glowed with golden fire, as though the heavens themselves gathered to witness a moment, unlike any before. The gods assembled, not for rivalry or pride, but for a council that would shape eternity. At the center sat Zeus, weary yet luminous, no longer the storm of wrath, but the father of gods and men. His eyes carried the weight of ages, but still a flicker of thunder shone within. One by one, the Olympians took their place. Hera, calm and resolute, held a gaze filled with judgment and compassion. Athena carried scrolls of wisdom, already shaping laws for mortals and immortals alike. Apollo glowed with healing radiance, his presence like a promise of renewal. Artemis stood watchful at his side, her eyes fixed on horizons unseen. Even Ares, once consumed by rage, bowed his head, silent but changed. Zeus raised his hand, and stillness fell. His voice was not thunder, but steady wind, carrying sorrow and resolve. "We have fought, we have burned, and shaken the earth beneath our pride," he said. "But if Olympus is to endure, it must be through balance, not dominion, through harmony, not conquest." The council remained silent, their eyes fixed upon the king of gods. Athena rose first, her tone firm but gentle. "Let Olympus be a circle, not a throne," she declared. "Let no single will command above all others. Let wisdom and justice be our pillars." Hera nodded, her eyes softening as she looked upon Zeus. "Then Olympus will not be a palace of quarrels, but a home of guardians," she said. Apollo added, "The light of truth will be our guide. We will sing of renewal, not war." Poseidon inclined his head, his voice deep as the sea. "The waves rage, but they also heal. Let my waters carry this accord across the world." All eyes turned once more to Zeus. He looked upon them not as subjects, but as companions, equals. "For the first time I speak not as sovereign, but as one among you," he said. "So be it." The last war of Zeus ends, and the first peace of Olympus begins. The skies did not erupt with thunder. No flames rose from the mountains. Instead, a soft wind swept across the council, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth far below. Mortals felt a subtle stillness, though they could not name it. The heavens had turned a page, and so the gods sealed their accord, not with blood or chains, but with a vow of balance. A vow to guard, to guide, to remember that unchecked flame burns itself to ash. Zeus leaned back, weary but at peace. His reign, once marked by thunderbolts, would be remembered for the day he laid them down. The council dispersed, each carrying a share of responsibility. The world would still tremble. Mortals would still rise and fall. But Olympus stood firm, not a fortress of fear, but a beacon of balance. Thus ended the last war of Zeus. Not in ruin, but in renewal. A story not of domination, but of wisdom even gods must learn. That true power lies not in ruling alone, but in standing together,